Good morning. Yeah. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Why are we up so fucking early? I mean, how important can this speech be if we're giving it at noon? It can't be that important. Every decent musician in town is asleep. Or they will be before I'm done with this thing, I guarantee you. I got a bit of a mess up here, but when I was invited to do the keynote speech at this year's conference, I was a little hesitant, as the word keynote made me uncomfortable. It seemed to suggest that there was a keynote to be struck that sums up whatever's going on out there in the streets. 5 days of bands, hundreds of venues from morning to night, and no one really hardly agrees on anything in pop anymore. There is no keynote, I don't think. There's no unified theory of everything. You can ask Einstein. But you can pick any band, say Kiss, and you can go early theater rock proponents expressing the true raging hormones of youth, or they suck. You can go Fish, inheritors of the Grateful Dead's mantle, brilliant center of the true alternative community, or they suck. You go Bruce Springsteen, natural-born poetic genius off the streets of Monmouth County. Right? Hardest working New Jerseyan in show business, voice of the common man, future of rock and roll, or he sucks. Get the fuck out of here. You can pick any band and create your own equation. It's fun. There was even a recent book that focused on the Beatles and decided, you got it, they sucked. So, really, instead of a keynote speech, I thought perhaps there should be a keynotes speech, or perhaps many keynote speakers. I exaggerate for effect, but only a little bit. So, with that as my disclaimer, I move cautiously on. Still, it's great to be in a town with 10,000 bands, or whatever. Anybody know the actual number? Come on. A lot of them, right? Back in late '64, when I picked up the guitar, that would have seemed like some insane teenage pipe dream. Because first of all, it would have been numerically impossible. There just weren't that many guitars to go around in those days. They simply hadn't made that many yet. It was we would all have to have been sharing. Guitar players were rare, mostly music school, and bands were rare. And until the Beatles hit, played primarily instrumental music. And there wasn't that much music to play. When I picked up the guitar, there was only 10 years of rock history to draw on. That'd be like all of known pop being only the music that you know that's occurred between 2002 and now. The most groups in one place I'd ever seen as a teenager was 20 bands at the Keyport Mattawan Rollerdrome in a battle to the death. So many styles were overlapping at that point in time that you would have a doo-wop singing group with full pompadours and matching suits set up next to our band playing a garage version of Them's Mystic Eyes, set up next to a full 13-piece soul show band. And still, that's nothing minutely compared to what's going on the streets of Austin right now. So it's incredible to be back. I've had a lot of fun here in Austin since the 70s, and Jim Franklin and the Armadillo World Headquarters. And so it's fascinating to see what's become of the music that I've loved my whole life. Pop's become, I guess, a new language, cultural force, social movement. Actually, a series of new languages, cultural forces, and social movements that have inspired and enlivened the second half of the 20th century and the dawning years of this one, I mean, who would have thought there would have been a sax-playing president or a soul-singing president, you know? When we started, 30 years old for a rock musician was unthinkable. You know, Bill Haley kept his age a relative secret, so when Danny and the Juniors sang Rock and Roll's Here to Stay, they didn't have a clue as to how terrifyingly fucking right they were going to be. You know? When I look out from my stage these days, I look into the eyes of 3 generations of people, and still popular music continues to provide its primary function as youth music, as a joyous argument starter, and as a subject for long, booze-filled nights of debate with Steve Van Zandt over who reigns ultimately supreme. There are so many subgenres and factions: two-tone, acid rock, alternative dance, alternative metal, alternative rock, art punk, art rock, avant-garde metal, black and death metal, Christian metal, heavy metal, funk metal, glam metal, medieval metal, indie metal, melodic death metal, melodic black metal, metalcore, hardcore, electronic hardcore, folk punk, folk rock, pop punk, Britpop, grunge, sadcore, surf music, psychedelic rock, punk rock, hip-hop, rap metal, Nintendo core, huh? I just want to know what Nintendo core is myself. But rock noir, shock rock, skate punk, noisecore, noise pop, noise rock, pagan rock, Paisley Underground, indie pop, indie rock, heartland rock, roots rock, samba rock, screamo, emo, shoegazing, stoner rock, swamp pop, synth pop, rock against communism, garage rock, blues rock, death and roll, lo-fi, jangle pop, folk music. Just add neo and post to everything I said and mention them all again. Oh yeah, and rock and roll. So, I mean, holy shit, this is all going on in this town right now. For a guy who realizes U2 is probably the last band he's going to know the names of all 4 members of, it's overwhelming. So, perhaps the most prophetic comment I've heard over the past quarter century about rock music was made by Lester Bangs upon Elvis's death. And in 1977, Lester Bangs said Elvis was probably the last thing we were all going to agree on, Public Enemy not counting. From here on in, you would have your heroes and I'd have mine. The center of your world may be Iggy Pop or Joni Mitchell or maybe Dylan. Mine might be Kiss or Pearl Jam, but we would never see eye to eye again and be brought together by one music again. And his final quote in the article was, so instead of saying goodbye to Elvis, I'm going to say goodbye to you. And while that's been proven 1,000 times over, still here we are in a town with thousands of bands, each with a style and philosophy and a song of their own. And I think the best of them believe that they have the power to turn Lester's prophecy inside out and to beat his odds. So as the records that my music was initially released on give way to a cloud of ones and zeros, and as I carry my entire record collection since I was 13 in my breast pocket, I'd like to talk about the one thing that's been consistent over the years: the genesis and power of creativity, the power of the songwriter, or let's say composer, or just creator. So whether you're making dance music, Americana, rap music, electronica, it's all about how you're putting what you do together. The elements you're using don't matter. Purity of human expression and experience is not confined to guitars, to tubes, to turntables, to microchips. There is no right way, no pure way of doing it. There's just doing it. We live in a post-authentic world. And today authenticity is a house of mirrors. It's all just what you're bringing when the lights go down. It's your teachers, your influences, your personal history. And at the end of the day, it's the power and purpose of your music that still matters. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how I put what I've done together in the hopes that someone slugging away in one of the clubs tonight may find some small piece of it valuable. And this being Woody Guthrie's 100th birthday and the centerpiece of this year's South by Southwest Conference, I'm also going to talk a little bit about my musical development and where it intersected with Woody's and why. In the beginning, every musician has their genesis moment. For you, it might have been the Sex Pistols or Madonna or Public Enemy. It's whatever initially inspires you to action. Mine was 1956, Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show. It was the evening I realized a white man could make magic, that you did not have to be constrained by your upbringing, by the way you looked, or by the social context that oppressed you. You could call upon your own powers of imagination, and you could create a transformative self. A certain type of transformative self that perhaps at any other moment in American history might have seemed difficult, if not impossible. And I always tell my kids that they were lucky to be born in the age of reproducible technology. Otherwise, they'd be traveling in the back of a wagon and I'd be wearing a jester's hat. So, you know, the advent, it's all about timing. It's all about timing. The advent of television and its dissemination of visual information changed the world in the 50s the way the internet has over the past 20 years. Remember, it wasn't just the way Elvis looked, it was the way he moved that made people crazy, pissed off, driven to screaming ecstasy, and profane revulsion. That was television. When they made an attempt to censor him from the waist down, it was because of what you could see happening in his pants. Elvis was the first modern 20th century man, the precursor of the sexual revolution, of the civil rights revolution, drawn from the same Memphis as Martin Luther King, creating fundamental outsider art that would be embraced by a mainstream popular culture. Television and Elvis gave us full access to a new language, a new form of communication, a new way of being, a new way of looking, a new way of thinking about sex, about race, about identity, about life, a new way of being an American, a human being, and a new way of hearing music. Once Elvis came across the airwaves, once he was heard and seen in action, you could not put the genie back in the bottle. After that moment, there was yesterday, and there was today, and there was a red-hot rockabilly forging of a new tomorrow before your very eyes. So, 1 week later, inspired by the passion in Elvis's pants, my little 6-year-old fingers wrapped themselves around a guitar neck for the first time, rented from Mike Dill's Music in Freehold, New Jersey. They just wouldn't fit. Failure with a capital F. So I just beat on it and beat on it and beat on it in front of the mirror, of course. I still do that. Shh. Don't you? Come on. You gotta check your moves. But even before there was Elvis, my world had begun to be shaped by the little radio with a 6-inch mono speaker that sat on top of our refrigerator. My mother loved music and she raised us on pop music radio. So between 8 and 8:30 every morning, as I snowed sugar onto my sugar pop,